Hello and welcome, Star Wars fans, to this week's episode of Duel of the Ranks, a show where we debate takes so hot that they'd melt a planet with twin suns. My name's Brody, and this week I'm joined by my co-host Amanda as we attempt to discover what story is truly the best from a galaxy far, far away. On this week's episode, we're going to be discussing ranks and hot takes from Ahsoka, Part 7, Dreams and Madness. By the end of this episode, we'll have a definitive answer on where this piece of Star Wars content ranks amongst the rest. I'm back. I was gone for a week. I missed it. I missed everything. Thankfully, I watched Ahsoka. I haven't even listened to the episode yet. I am the worst fan of my own
Not
show.
only that, but the episode is not even out yet.
It's like I have not done my job. But by the time this episode is out, that episode will be out. So people will be like, whoa, they did 2 in 1 night. I'll be like, I'm back. They're like,
yeah.
From what? Grabbing a snack?
Yeah.
Like, no, we didn't put an episode out last week, but
actually we had some really great engagement and listenership, and we actually had someone else here in your place.
I saw that too. Brian was back.
Yeah.
How did that go?
I thought he was a great replacement for you.
Wow. Finally.
It was like 101 episodes. Time for a change.
I can finally take the Christian walk and just sail into the west.
Do it.
My spirit is descending. I depart to the west. Well, he's so good that I think I want to make an announcement.
I mean, I kind of did last week.
You made what did you tell the audience?
Did you not listen to that?
I haven't even edited it yet. We just established this.
Yeah.
Okay, so the audience knows this guy's gonna like host with us.
I mean, I kind of soft launched him. I was like,
you soft launched him into this community that is the Duel of the Ranks fandom.
I thought he fit well. He had some great insights when we first had him on, and you know, it's nice to have someone other than you to talk to.
We sound way too much like an old married couple. Yeah. Like this is like, it's nice to have more people than you to talk to. Well, I feel that. I listen to my own podcasts and I'm like, you really could cut the content down, Brody. Well, all right. Well, then the world knows. Let's bring out our newest co-host of the show, Brian.
Well, hey, howdy, hey. Did you say co-host?
I said the word co-host.
Oh, no one told me that, but I mean, I'll roll with it.
He's like, I agreed to guest host this one episode, and this became it. Yeah, no, you can't now.
Now I'm locked in. You're pressured in front of the whole audience.
Yeah, now you can't turn it down. Otherwise, you just look like an ass. So
we can't have that.
No,
we're happy to have you, Brian. Thanks again for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm just happy to finally have an outlet to stop wearing down my parents and my friends about Star Wars, who the ones who don't even watch it are tired of hearing about it. So it's nice to have an audience.
An audience, even if it's just us, Brian, we'll listen. We'll always listen.
It is just us, right?
Yeah. It's only us. We're not live. There's nobody else. Just ignore the numbers.
KG might join in a little bit.
Yeah, she's always here, but she is watching this because it's not animated, so that's something.
Right.
And if she's not watching live, she'll jump right afterwards. But yeah, and there's always if you look at the listenership for the podcast side of things. Did you know we're a top 3% podcast now globally?
3%?
3%. I was dumbfounded too.
Wow.
Yeah. It's been a ride. It has been a ride. And you know, some of those folks, like, listen, in Germany, there's this one person, I'm not going to say the city, but we know you're listening. We know what city you're in. And like, hey, you're a real one. Ben, from the jump.
And we've tried so many times to call them out in the podcast for them to also reach out to us and be like, hey,
we
see you.
Yeah, you know, you send us anything. We'll send you like a shirt.
Yeah.
Maybe a boat.
Yeah.
We don't have a boat.
Oh man, that's international shipping though.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's okay. Because it's, you know, we'll make it work. We'll make it work for you, Germany. We'll make it work. We'll get you some swag. We'll get you some swag. But okay, now we've established that. No more talking about this. No more personal stuff. We need to go into the content. Ahsoka, episode 7.
The penultimate.
Yeah, I took a week off. I'm like, fired up. Let's talk it.
Okay, let's get into it.
What
Part
happened?
7, called Dreams and Madness. Hera faces a panel of senators on Coruscant for her actions on Satos, and none of the senators are taking the threat of Thrawn's return seriously. C-3PO arrives with an urgent message from Senator Organa, who claims she approved Hera's mission. Meanwhile, Hu Yang and Ahsoka arrive at Peridia and are welcomed with an Imperial minefield meant to harm the Purgles transporting them. The two of them manage to evade Thrawn's fighters and hide out in the Purgle boneyard outside of the atmosphere. Ahsoka uses the Force to connect and locate Sabine. While traveling with the Noti, Ezra and Sabine are attacked by scavengers and are found by Baylan and Shin. Baylan tells Shin that this is where their paths separate. Ahsoka drops in to help Sabine and Ezra fight off the scavengers and night troopers before Thrawn calls back his troops ready to finally leave this planet.
Ooh.
I am too.
Yeah, you're ready to get out of here?
I think they hit every note that they could have hit in the last episode, and I'm ready to see some crazy stuff go down.
Yeah.
Yeah, overall, I felt like this was kind of, again, that a dip in the experience for me.
Really?
In the story, it felt like it was just a little bit more like they have been pushing the story forward and now it's just kind of sliding on ice. If that's just off the top of my head how I'm describing it. But I feel like specifically when it comes to me ranking these episodes, that the story and the characters really kind of took a hit this episode. It was so jarring for me to see Baylan and Shin kind of go their separate ways. It felt like it was kind of out of nowhere.
It felt that way for her too.
Yeah.
I'm sure it did.
She's like,
yeah, she's like, are you sure? But like, because
Bye,
one of
Felicia.
the
Not that I
most
can't handle it, but
one of the most interesting like characters, or both of them have been truly like the most engaging characters this whole series. And now it's like they're kind of throwing in a curveball right at the end. And I mean, Shin was listening to everything Baylan would tell her to do. And now all of a sudden she's just like on her own.
You know, but where the story lacked in story and where the characters lacked in character development, we certainly got more great immersive universe. You got C-3PO. And let's just talk for a second about that training sequence Ahsoka had with holographic
Clone Wars
Anakin Skywalker, Clone Wars Anakin Skywalker. Just how beautiful was that?
That was a
Yeah.
great way to include his character back in. It felt like it was present day Anakin, the way that he kind of like talked to her and like seemed like he was looking at her. But it makes sense because it feels like a direct cut from that Clone Wars episode where all of the troopers are around her and shooting the stun rays. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
right,
It felt like exactly taken from that moment.
Yes. Again.
the body
Yeah.
language and the camera angles even.
Yeah. No, I loved that. And in any moment you get Anakin Skywalker back in that. And like they're just, what I love is they're milking it. They're milking it. And like he really feels somewhat back. And my favorite part though wasn't even that. I love when Thrawn's like, oh, she was a Jedi. Who was her master? And they're like, oh, Anakin Skywalker. And his face is
He's
like, holy hell. Like, we got to take this seriously. Back everyone up. This is like, you do not know what you're messing with. Like,
yeah.
I loved that because he knew who Anakin turned into. And he's like, okay, no, like this is a serious threat.
Yeah.
Let's have everyone pull off this and like be one step ahead of her. And we know we can't beat her. So let's just send her a different direction so we can do what we need to do. I loved that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he probably targeted her noticeable compassion, that Anakin would also let, seep through into his decisions. I'm sure he's predicting that and, expecting her to be kind of the same rebellious spirit. And I love that parallel. You can see the whole story kind of play out how we think it is, how he would have taken on Anakin or Darth Vader. And he is that kind of tactical genius that can. So that's what I'm most looking forward to. It was really cool seeing him use every tool that he has available, like the Night Sister magic on top of like the map. So he uses technology and magic together to like try angulate their position and fire on that position. That was cool stuff.
That was cool. That really started to show like the power of the magic that the Night Sisters have, and clearly the relationship that Thrawn has built with them is going to be leveraged in a way that no one else can really counter.
Yeah. And I did think it was funny, like everyone on YouTube last week was saying, like, oh, those are all zombies, or like the Walking Dead stormtroopers, or whatever, ghosts. And like we saw them, like
They
even
died,
yeah,
like
they died.
regular.
They just died. Even my wife, who's not a Star Wars fan, she's like, oh, I don't know
They're-
why I was
they're-
expecting
they're
them to be
just
something
dead.
else. Didn't even like follow Star Wars and like thought like, oh yeah. I feel like they were building them up to be something different. I'm like, yeah, I think a lot of people did.
Yeah, and
They
then
still have the funky voices, though. I will say, kind of like the zombie inquisitor or the
Yep.
smoke inquisitor did. So I
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe some of them are alive, some of them are dead-ish.
That is
Could be a mix of both, and they're just kind of saving the zombie part for
This
for
it's
the next
very
episode.
simple. Someone just needs to go in and play Thriller, and if that rhythm is there, you know they're zombies. You know they're not right. Can you imagine Thrawn?
no.
So good just leads in, and he just goes into a Michael Jackson. Cause I'm bad, and just breaks out in Thriller. I would love that. That's what I want to see for this
Yeah,
next
I would
episode.
love to
That's
see
a
a YouTube
finale.
Oh
No
my
one
God.
would see it coming, not even me, and I predicted it. Well, what else? What else happened? Oh yeah, Ezra, when he fought, saying like, "No, I have the Force. That's my ally," and you're like, "Oh, okay." And then he fights with the Force, and you're like, "Oh no, he's like legit."
Yeah.
And like he stopped her lightsaber, and it reminded me of Kylo Ren. You just see that
Mhm.
vibrating. Remember in the Force?
Oh, yeah,
Awakens,
when he,
stops
like,
that
stops
beam?
it.
It's like
I
And then-
loved that. That was so cool. Yeah, I
Mhm.
definitely got Last Jedi vibes when Sabine was like, "Here, take it," and like knowing Luke is just like that's
Yeah.
kind of what Ezra was like. I don't need that silly little thing.
Yeah, like he's like a legit Jedi now. Like he's not leaning on the crutch of a lightsaber. He's like, no, I'm
one with the Force.
And he's got
for
the wisdom
sure.
of leadership now. He's taught the turtle tribe to rise up and rebel against the marauders.
Okay.
And he's equipped them with slingshots.
Yes.
Okay, the Noti were super cute in that I love that scene because it feels very authentic to Star Wars and very
Yes.
very authentic to Rebels too, that
Mhm.
Western style chase scene. And it was really adorable that the Noti are a peaceful people. So they were just like
Intro
using
level.
slingshots and like throwing junk at them. I think it's great to see just different alignments in the universe.
Yeah, I was getting during that like very Lord of the Rings vibes when they're basically riding those warg-ish things, whatever they are, and they're on this like hilltop watching them. I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm looking at like Rohan.
Oh, yeah.
It was filmed in New Zealand. Yeah.
I'm glad you
Yeah.
brought that up because I gave the technical aspects a pretty high score. Let's
Mhm.
see, 8.7. And I had seen some comments from people that they didn't like the coloration because it got a little gray
Yeah,
and
it's
cloudy.
It's really dark. Yeah.
I really
I
liked
like
it.
that.
It took me to an Anne Leibovitz like photo shoot, if you know who that is. She
Mm.
does a lot of if you think of the Entertainment Weekly like special series that they always do for a Star Wars show, Annie Leibovitz is usually like the famous photographer that does them, and they're very moody and cinematic, and that's exactly what I felt
Yeah.
in that scene.
Yeah, I could see that.
But also, like, in that scene, we see Balin and Ahsoka kind of go at each other again, and it's kind of like, but why?
Mm. And I want to know too, like what's going on that planet that Balin's like, it's calling. Don't
Yeah.
you feel
Seeks
it?
the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's been an awakening.
Yeah, have you felt it? Yeah, there's something there, and a lot of folks have
very vague, ambiguous awakening.
yeah, and everyone's like alluding to the fact that I'm like, oh, it has to be Palpatine, and I'm like, what if it's like a dog?
What it's like a volcano?
Yeah, what if it's just something that's like his inner peace? He's like, this is what I've always wanted. I'm just saying, like, let's. I've learned with Star Wars to not overthink anything. Just
It's
like,
fun though.
yeah, I mean, could it be Palpatine and him wanting to rebuild the next? I mean, it certainly seems like that's the direction it's going.
I could
Like,
see that. Yeah.
he wants to be a part of the next order.
Well, actually, I felt like this episode really starts to set up the vision for the Dave Filoni film, because when
Mhm.
we are on Coruscant in that like Senate meeting, Carson Teva is like, what about what happened on Mandalore? and they bring up Moff Gideon, and I'm like, oh, okay, so you're definitely like making a very strong connection between all of these elements, like
Yeah.
right here. And it seems like, I mean, is Ahsoka gonna get a season 2? Maybe, but it also could seem like, yeah, they're making Thrawn's return the film.
Yeah, I totally think that's accurate. And I mean,
I'm down.
yeah, and I think you're going to see Thrawn. He's going to fail, but it's going to give rise to. I mean, I think that's what's going to get so many folks interested in the First Order because obviously they're already doing stuff on the outside, but this is going to showcase how weak the New Republic is.
Yeah.
And I think so many folks who have a problem with it are going to go off and secretly support this
Yep.
First Order because obviously you don't have a Death Star planet without funding.
Yeah.
Someone's going in and financing this whole venture, and I don't care how strong Palpatine is in the Force. You need some economist back there. Like, this is a business operation at the end of the day, not just some sinister old man willing it with the Force. So
yeah, let's go to Canto Bight. See some more.
It's more
economic
war
intrigue.
deals.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, some sketchy behind the scenes kind of commentary.
I
on
would
the
much
war
rather
machine.
never go back to Canto Bight. That one
I love
movie
Canto Bight.
was enough for me.
Canto Bight's fine.
But like this
don't
episode
love it.
also really set up the politics of
Yeah.
what feels like a heavier film, you know, with the infighting and the, well, I was just ignoring your order or all that kind of stuff. Like, you know,
Yeah, it's a good balance, I think. It's
Yeah.
not too much politics, but just enough to kind of give it that undertone.
exactly.
Yeah.
Although I would have liked to see Hera face some consequences, but Leia Organa
CPS
made
on
sure
her.
to
Yeah.
made sure to put an end to it, which I was wondering if they were going to try to bring in Billy Lord as they did for Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
But it looks like she's just going to remain an off-screen presence.
Yeah. No, I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like Hera is such an insignificant character in this show that I mean, boy, she is bland for me. And anytime her storyline is on screen, I'm just like, I don't care. I'm not interested. And that's sad because I think Hera's a great character in Rebels.
I know.
And maybe, look, I don't know if it's the acting. I don't know if it's the writing. I don't know what it is. And maybe it's just like how she's set up. Personally, I think it has a lot more to do with like the purpose of the character
Yeah.
and how it all feels inconsequential. And even that room where she's on Coruscant, that whole thing felt so stale. Now, anytime the actress who plays Mon Mothma, I'm forgetting her name, but boy, anytime she's on screen,
Genevieve O'Reilly.
yeah, she just carries it. She's fantastic. And so she can help create drama when there isn't any
Mhm.
and like a dramatic tone. But like at the very end, she's like, is this something we should be concerned about? And it goes back. And I feel like I'm watching, like, I see her and I'm like, oh, this is like Oscar worthy. And then I
Yeah,
see
and then
Hera and I'm like, this is the CW.
That's so accurate. Yeah, because like Mon Mothma's face, like Genevieve O'Reilly's able to portray so much like concern and worry, and like you can see the stakes on her face.
Yeah.
And then Hera's just like, yeah, you know, like her blue eyes.
Sassy. She's sassy like Hera is, but
Yes.
I also have a personal vendetta against Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Why?
She stole my husband.
Ah,
I'll
me
never
too.
forgive her.
What? Who's your husband? Or
Ewan
was your husband?
McGregor.
Ewan McGregor.
Oh,
They're married.
wow.
She's married to the
Oh,
owner.
God, nepotism. No,
So
no.
she
no,
married a good actor. And
She's a good actress.
Incredible actor.
Is she?
She's not
Yes.
bad.
Have you
I'll give
seen
her credit
I
Fargo?
don't.
where credit's due.
I've not seen Fargo.
Fargo's great. Shout out to Fargo. She was
that the one
also
with the horse?
in Fargo. No, it's the series on Hulu, based off of like the Coen brothers film loosely. So it's really good. And then she was also Ramona Flowers in Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She can hang, but I just think that man, it hurts to give criticism to Dave Filoni, but I think that the show so far has really lacked in us emotionally caring for specifically the title character. Like even with this, like
Yeah, that's an
this is
issue.
our first time seeing Ahsoka post her like death and rebirth, and it doesn't feel like her character has gone through much of a change.
She's
Dude.
happier. She's
It was great to see
laughing,
her
Smiles.
smile. Yeah.
but like, yeah, still
Yeah,
kind of unclear.
Oh, it is insane how, like, in my mind, and honestly, I don't know what it is here either. It could be the writing, it could be Rosario Dawson, which I think Rosario Dawson is doing just about as good as you can do in that role. So I'm not trying to pick on her, but boy, as you mentioned, it is just stale. I mean, this character, this journey, and I still go back to the whole Anakin thing where she's on that planet and whatever. She goes to the world between worlds, and it's supposed to be this Mufasa-esque moment. And her character in it, it just feels like, I don't want to say forced, but like when you had the moment with like Rafiki, right, leading up to that moment, there was this big buildup, right? Simba was walking this one line, and you had the guide come back in, point the error of the ways of the hero in that moment, and say, "You're off track. We need to get you back on track." We didn't have that with Ahsoka really this season.
Mm-hmm.
You had that with that droid. We didn't even know. I'm like, do you need this moment with Anakin? Why is he here? Okay, like just from a story perspective, it doesn't make sense.
It hasn't paid off yet, unless it's going for like a long payoff at the end where like
Right.
Ahsoka is going to be faced with, I don't know, Thrawn, and then she can like is she going to remember what she learned in there and like have a change of heart in some degree? But I don't know. It doesn't feel.
This show to me
stakes
feels
are high
like
enough.
it's so focused on the immersive universe that it forgot the basic construct. I mean, basic construct
How do you
of telling
structure
a
an
story.
episode? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of the biggest thing is lacking where, The Mandalorian had so much momentum because every episode was a very self-contained,
Mm-hmm.
villain of the week kind of thing going on. And yeah, there's like almost a duel every week or so. And those are great. And I love seeing the progression of those duels. That is kind of making it feel kind of pop culture, samurai film kind of Saturday Western adventure-y, like Star Wars is supposed to be, but without having like a self-contained story every episode. It like every story beat that they hit is just something that had to happen, and that we've
Mm-hmm.
seen coming from a mile away.
And this 100% should have, like many of these other shows, they need to stop being shows. They need to be movies because you're doing a poor job effectively, for the most part, outside of Andor, telling a cohesive story. Because when it's, 7, 8 episodes and each one's 30 minutes long, why don't you cut it down to a 2.5-hour movie, get rid of a lot of the other stuff, and make it more impactful and really pack that in?
I was thinking about that too. And even going back to the first episode, I was like, yes, I think that this could be a better movie. But even then, they would have to create more ethos, like with the characters themselves. You would have to go back and see more of the connection between Ahsoka and Sabine to feel that connection. Even with Hera, like we need to see more of their like relationship, and we're just not.
Oh, man.
It's just like not there.
I tell you what you do. You get rid of anything involving Hera for the most part. Make her a nice Easter egg that comes in later on. You do, and I do enjoy stuff with Sabine, and I enjoyed Ezra this episode. My biggest thing, and I'm enjoying the show overall, so I don't want to be too critical, but I think there's a lot where, yes, in the beginning, I don't think you even really need to dive too deep into the Ahsoka Sabine relationship. You understand there's something there, maybe a quick flashback at most, and then really, like I said, the stuff with Anakin, I want to see early on that there's unrest within Ahsoka.
Yes.
She was so stale that we're like, oh, this is a moment she needed. I didn't know she was off her course. And now she's like, no, I'm Ahsoka the White. I'm like, oh, like,
You're just
I guess we're on a new path now.
They're playing it off as an acting choice, just like Hayden Christensen being stale in episode 2 is an acting choice, supposedly. I mean, not saying he's a bad actor, but like, I'm not gonna pretend he's amazing.
I'm not even gonna say it's an acting choice. I think it's a direction choice.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's at least half.
I will say though that like I have gotten more used to Rosario Dawson's performance, like when she is in the fighter jet, like trying to evade all of the attacks in the minefield. It was kind of a nice parallel to Anakin Skywalker being the sky guy that he is. And I felt like she scrunched her face a little bit so I could tell that she was focusing. And when she does see Ezra and embraces him, like, I really do, I gotta say, the headpiece is a 10 out of 10 for me. It really has
Yeah.
like come a long way from where it was, and
Yeah.
that really makes it for me. I also love her costume. Actually, I've talked about this
Oh,
with
it's
other
great.
people.
Oh,
Like,
it's so
all of the
smart.
costumes are amazing, but the contacts, the makeup is just a little off, but the costumes are 10 out of 10.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, it looks fantastic. The choreography with the lightsaber action is fantastic this season. The immersive universe
Music?
is fantastic. The music is fantastic.
Music is insane.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so good. It's so good. We're just talking the story and characters, and it's really, really unfortunate because if this were just structured a little bit better, I think you would have. I mean, I think this would beat Andor. I really
I
do.
know.
I really do. And that's what's so unfortunate is like I'm enjoying it, but now I'm feeling like you've kind of cheapened it to like a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a more like paint by numbers story. Whereas like you didn't have to do anything crazy, but let's focus on the main character and show like, especially if there's some form of struggle there, highlight that.
Just
Mhm.
make it engaging at least. Yeah.
Mhm.
Some
Put
kind
the
of conflict.
audience has never once this season sat in her shoes and said, dang, man, I can emotionally relate to her.
The closest I got to that was in the flashback moments with young Ahsoka, because
Yeah, it's like,
I
oh,
was able to finally feel
dark.
like she's young. Like, you feel that in that moment.
Yeah, dude. All I know is Boba Fett was like bland in his own show. Mando is bland in his own show for the most part. And we always say, well, it's because he has the helmet on. Nope. Now we just know if you're a main character, sorry, you're a scrub.
I know, except Andor.
Andor was the
Yeah, that's
first
just a
time.
perfect show. Just
Can we just stop naming TV shows after a singular character?
thank you. Thank
Please.
you.
And then it
So
upsets
lazy.
everybody when it's like, oh, this is Ahsoka's show, but then she was only in like 5 minutes of this, or
Your take.
it puts too much pressure really on the one character. And if it's really not an entire character study and a story like around that character, then you're kind of setting yourself up to fail.
Yeah.
Well, your take of calling the Mandalorian show The Mandalorian, but also every season featuring
A different
and
Mandalorian.
that's been catching some fire. And I've been on like different like community things and stuff's come up and people have cited that take of yours. And I'm like, hey, if this keeps growing, this like might actually catch like Lucasfilm's ear. So like I'm like, let's just keep that going. I mean, we're a little behind on that by now, but they could change it. They could pivot. Look, and at the end of the day, just like gotta be very clear. We're happy they're making content.
Yes.
We're enjoying all of this. I would rather have this than not have anything. It's basically feels like there's a few very easy missed layups that are like are integral to telling a good story, which are telling a good story.
I am really excited about a lot of the story elements, though, like the Night Sisters, Thrawn being back, traveling back to like across galaxies is super interesting. Even Ahsoka coming through the world between worlds, whatever Balin is out searching for, all of those nuggets are like really intriguing to me, and I'm so excited to see kind of where it ends up, because I really don't know. Is it going to end with like, how is the Chimera supposed to fit in the little
In the hyperspace
thing? Yeah, like how is it going to get out of there?
Yeah. I don't know.
They gotta just park next to it and unload all the bodies again.
Oh my gosh.
The next, entire episode is just them moving the bodies from one ship to the other. Then next
Yeah, they're like,
season, they might go back to the galaxy.
Yeah, that's actually the finale.
Oh my gosh.
Shipping and logistics.
Well, and this episode particularly ended on like a very like chipper high note, which also felt very Rebels. Like where it's like, we're all back together and I'm finally going to get off this planet. But it feels like very much foreshadowing on maybe they are going to get stuck out there.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I hope not.
I don't know. It's hard. It's hard. I can't really say.
Ezra's like, you guys really suck at saving people.
Yeah.
He's like, at
Some
least
rescue.
he's like, it's okay. We'll all be turtle people now.
I'd be down to be a turtle person.
Yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Ezra. All right, with that, do we have anything else to say before we move into the hot take segment?
Oh, just that I've to touch on like the filmmaking, the technical aspects of it, like just the ship models themselves. I don't know if y'all saw the official Star Wars YouTube channel put out like a, behind the scenes of it, and they're practical models with some pretty complex like movement and different mechanics going on. So I was watching this episode kind of with that lens of knowing that Ahsoka's flying around in a practical model, and it just looked incredible. So that's finally understood why the ship combat looks amazing. It's because it's a lot of practical effects.
That's awesome.
But it's come a long way too. It's
wow.
That is probably the highlight of the show for me so far.
Awesome.
I also have called out. I think it was in this episode when those like 2 transport vehicles stop in that field. How it's like very zombified. Like it's very, what scraps do we have laying around together, and parts from this ship and parts from that ship. I like that kind of lore behind it all. And then I don't know what is it called, the Eye of Sauron. Scion, yeah. I love in a previous episode, we have like the classic like closing of like the radial doors in Star Wars, but this one it's like fancier, and it's like it like rolls through. And I love that. It felt fancy and cool and like an upgrade,
Huge upgrade.
Yeah.
Mega upgrade.
There are a lot of things we like, but we kind of just talk about the things that we don't like.
Well, story's kind of the fundamental thing that everything else
and characters.
Everything else kind of becomes like sugar, icing, cake. Yeah. I would say music's really important in there as well. Yeah. But you can tell, like, again, I'm going back to this TV show, The Bear. There's not really a lot of practical effects, no CGI, and it's amazing. Why? Because the story itself is fantastic,
and the characters
sell it. If you don't have those two things, you are not going to be a world-renowned TV show. I mean, you might be able to win some Emmys on some really cool things, but if you don't have that, it hurts. Now, some shows, like I am rewatching Rings of Power right now, and I will say, when you're watching it like an episode a day kind of thing, it's significantly better because there's so many details and things they throw in there that when you're able to just watch it through, it's a lot more enjoyable. And I know Obi-Wan is kind of the same way. I don't feel that way about Mandalorian or a lot of these other shows.
I have not gone back to rewatch Andor yet. I can't wait.
I can't wait either.
But I imagine it gets even better when you can just watch it all the way through. But that was one where I was like, truly each episode felt like it had a start and an end, but like a through story overall. Man,
I'm just gonna leave up KG's comment that Amanda is easily amused by doors. You have no idea. Every week she comes here, she just
fascinating.
I catch her in the front yard giggling.
I'm just like opening it and closing it.
My neighbors are like, y'all are insane. And be like, yeah, we've done a Star Wars podcast for 101 episodes. It'll do it to you.
Yeah.
All right. With that, let's go into this next segment of the show.
Don't be too proud of this podcast you've constructed. The ability to rank content is insignificant next to the power of an exceptional hot take.
It is hot takes time, and we have a hot take from the dearly departed, now forced ghost, Christian. We don't?
I couldn't get access to the email. Unless you can do it real quick. But I do have...
I like how I look at you.
And I was like,
so
unfortunately, the audience didn't see Amanda's face where I look at Amanda and I'm like, we have his hot take because you sent earlier. We had one from Christian. Your face, don't say it, please.
If you can look for it real quick, I do have a hot take.
Where is it? Is it at the Duel of the Ranks email?
It was at one point, but now it's on the Wix.
Okay. All right. Well,
my hot take is that, you know what, this one's gonna come guns a-blazing, so if you're not seated yet, you might want to take a seat.
Oh.
I'm tired of Anthony Daniels in Star Wars.
What?
Ooh.
Anthony Daniels specifically?
C-3PO
What do you have
specifically.
against this man?
Okay, maybe not Anthony Daniels. I'm tired of C-3PO.
Oh, that's somewhat better. I mean, that
Somewhat
really is all
better.
his career is,
I
by the way.
know,
That's
but
actually him.
I would
but-
actually love the opportunity for Anthony Daniels to like play a different character, like a human
He
character.
does. In episode 2.
Where?
In the cantina when Obi-Wan is tracking down the changeling, or she's tracking him down after he cuts off her hand.
That's
There's a reaction
true.
shot of Anthony Daniels in there. He and Ahmed Best are actually both in that scene.
I will
Oh,
never,
wow.
yeah, I will never forget that, as that moment changed my life when I saw Anthony Daniels in the 2 seconds, and I was like, that's the best character in Star Wars right
Stop! No,
Showing
you
his-
10
didn't.
out of 10.
No,
Showing his
I
face.
want
Pretty cool.
Anthony Daniels to get kind of the Christopher Lloyd in Mandalorian season 3 treatment, where he like just gets to be his own like character, and then it's kind of like, I would love actually if all of the original Star Wars characters came back for completely different roles, like modern day Mark Hamill as like just a regular ass dude.
Mhm.
Like that feels so much more like a great Easter egg than being like, oh look, it's C-3PO again.
yeah.
I'm that comment was out of pocket. I think you've been canceled by everyone.
That's what I aim to do.
Yeah, some people
Goal.
say, some folks say if you got canceled, you did something right. But targeting Anthony Daniels, I think you done blasphemed yourself out of a good hot take
KG
here.
says blasphemy. Comments are just like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. It's a bit hot.
I mean, I'm glad that you made friends with doors, because I think you can see yourself out to one of them.
Clever. Clever. Nice.
No, it's a hot take. I'm gonna disagree. I think honestly, he was a highlight for me. I'm like, wow, this is the first time that we've had a live action character in their live action self. I mean, Luke Skywalker was all CGI'd up or whatever. This is the first time that we've had a live action character from the original Star Wars trilogy in this show.
Ahmed Best.
No, but like as themselves. You could say Darth Vader technically, even though he's like a Force ghost, but I mean alive and kicking in these TV shows in the Mandalorian universe. I think C-3PO is the
Do
first
you
one.
really think Anthony Daniels is in that costume?
Why wouldn't he be?
I think it's possible. I think it's also possible that he's not. So
He was
it's
alive
like-
and kicking pretty well at Star Wars Celebration a few months ago, so he was moving. The man danced. Like, he was doing his thing.
It's more than I can do. Yeah.
Brian, what do you think? Hot take? Agree? Disagree?
Disagree with her.
It's actually really funny because it's very similar to the hot take I wrote down, which was that I'm just kind of over cameos in general, and that I love C-3PO, but when I saw him on screen, I did feel nothing, honestly. It was like, okay, like, yeah, I love Anthony Daniels, I love the character, but like, it's just like every line, I'm just waiting for them to for it to be a reference. And a lot of they did steal his first line of dialogue is stolen from Obi-Wan.
Mhm.
You don't need to see my identification. Like, it's just I just think some directors don't really understand R2 and 3PO. Like, I don't think J.J. Abrams understood R2, and just like recycling the same voice lines and stuff is just like cheap. And it's just like they should just recast Leia and have her in there if she's that important to the character.
Yeah.
I will agree with that. I will say that's for not the take though. The take is that C-3PO should just be done in Star Wars. I'm saying I fully disagree with that. Now, in that scene, I was like, you sent a droid in? Like,
Yeah. And then doesn't one of the senators, they're like, he's just a droid, and Chopper's like,
Mere droid.
"Oh."
Hey, what?
but it's to the point though. He is still like a translating droid, and
yeah,
I think-
you're a protocol droid. Like, what
Yeah.
authority do you have?
I do think that was a bit wild.
He's Leia's dog, essentially. Like,
Leia's
run this message over there.
She's like, this is super important. This person go to jail for life.
Let me send my buddy.
Yeah, but I can't make the elevator downstairs to.
Hey, I think it just speaks to 3PO's credentials and the efforts, the sacrifices he's made for the rebellion are going a long way. And I agree with the decision to trust him with sensitive, high-level information. He's come a long way since the Clone Wars.
A long, long way. Yeah. All right. So again, I'm disagreeing. I don't want to never see C-3PO again. What do you think, Brian?
I would be okay with never seeing 3PO in particular, but if he's going to work in the story, if, just bring the right characters in that are going to work with the story, because the Heir to the Empire storyline is what they're building to, and I think they're going to need to eventually actually kind of address some of those questions and just recast the dang characters, man. There's so many good actors out there.
Yeah.
It's what Carrie Fisher would want. I mean, I'm sure. Alden Ehrenreich, I think, is a great Han Solo, despite the issues that movie has. And Donald Glover is like the best casting for Lando possible. Just like such a fan too. So I don't know. I think it's okay to use characters as long as they're not just kind of shoehorned in there for shock value. Yeah. At this point, it's not really surprising.
So you are okay with some reappearance of 3PO?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily. I don't think we should melt him. I don't think we should give it.
All
Recycle his parts.
Well, with that, Amanda.
I got a bad feeling about this hot take.
Okay, I have the hot take from our dearly departed Christian. All right, so here's what he said. Wrote us an email. Said Ahsoka is better for the Star Wars franchise than Andor. Whoa. He said the fans must decide which direction Star Wars should go. In a world of finite resources, let's assume this choice has to be made. In light of Ahsoka's awesomeness and taking into account the awesomeness of Andor, where should the creators/producers put their focus? Should we get back to the grand space opera and classic Star Wars like Ahsoka, even if it means sacrificing critically acclaimed filming/acting/realism like we saw in Andor? Or should we explore the different tones like espionage in Andor, space westerns like The Mandalorian, horrors, comedies, and more? Is it even Star Wars anymore if we attempt to colonize the film industry by exploring every tone possible and slapping the classic Star Wars on it? Is it irresponsible or simply unlocked potential? Does it lose its identity or enrich it? Is it the dark side of tempting a cash grab for us to kill it if you have to? Or is it a selfless promise of prosperity for the fandom? The fans and creators must choose. What say you? In the words of Syndrome from The Incredibles, and when everyone's super, no one will be. Maybe we can sustain both, but there's no fun in debate there.
Wow. Christian, thank you so much for writing in with that. That is a great, that should be published in the New York Times.
Yeah. What I was about to say, like that sounds like an article. That was great stuff, Christian. Thank you for sending it in. Personally, I really enjoy all of the different tones.
Yeah, it worked. Is he kind of saying that then Andor is the kind of more traditional route? Because it didn't have Force, it didn't have
No, I don't think he was saying that at all. I think he was saying that, to decide where it should go. And again, Ahsoka's fun, Andor's very different, but they're two greatly different tones.
True.
And he's just like he's saying, at what point do you just create a new story and let Star Wars be Star Wars, go one singular direction with one tone, or is it better to go all of these different directions? In which case, you have a variety of what really is Star Wars now. You have horror Star Wars, you have sci-fi Star Wars, you have comedy Star Wars, and that's where we exist. And I guess the argument from the business case, is it cheapening the IP or is it strengthening it? Is it better to go these different directions where you should let it, like when you say Lord of the Rings, there's a tone, there's a feeling.
There's a quality too.
Yeah, you don't get that with Star Wars. It's everywhere. Is that better or worse for the fandom and really the IP as a whole?
It's a great question. I think that Star Wars is meant to be fun. It's a bit more welcoming than like Lord of the Rings is, say. Maybe that's just because I haven't read the books.
It is more fun than the books.
Okay.
I have read them.
Yeah.
Yeah, The Two Towers is a
So like
doozy.
Star Wars is a bit more aimed at like youth and kind of appeals to all ages. And I think that by expanding the IP to include different tones gives a wider net for fans to find what they love about it. And I love that Star Wars fans have been popping up in these new shows. Like, I have friends that had never watched Star Wars before, but they watched The Mandalorian and they loved it because Grogu, Baby Yoda brought them into it, and that makes me so excited. Like, I know there's a certain section of fans that are like, "Well, you're not a real Star Wars fan." If you like Star Wars, you're a real Star Wars fan. That's it. It doesn't matter if you've seen everything or nothing. Like, I am excited to welcome whoever wants to talk and love Star Wars, like, into this fandom.
Oh yeah, and like I have a toddler who's like, I can't just show Star Wars to
Yeah.
without like scarring him from certain movies and scenes. But they have like a kids show, like with CGI and all that stuff, and we put that on, and it's like it's not Tales of the Jedi. Maybe that is what it is. I
The
don't know.
Young Jedi Adventures.
That's
I
something
think.
like
Yeah.
it. And I put that on, and he's just like was going around telling everyone, like, I watched Star Wars today, and so excited. And I'm like, all right, maybe I would have agreed with you before, but the fact that it brings this kid so much joy, what I think it is now, and we're at the point where we can say, well, what's your Star Wars, right? Are you an OG that just loves the original three and that's all that exists to you? Or are you like me and you're like, fight me, the prequels are the best? Or are you like Amanda, you came into it newer and you're like, Rebels and The Last Jedi break all that stuff from before? This is what, like, that's what's I love about Star Wars is you can pick what you like and rock with that. Just because there's new content you don't love doesn't mean the other stuff now sucks.
Yeah.
So, no, I like the variety a lot. I wouldn't like it in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I think it's very different when you have a singular author who set a specific tone, and then
Mhm.
people come in, like JD Payne and Patrick McKay, where they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna do this new thing that he never wrote," and like,
Mm.
that's just
And
tough.
especially with, like, Tolkien's legacy as far as, like, he and his estate have been like, "You can't work with any of this stuff, you can only have just this little bit." They've been very protective of that legacy where Lucas has been happy to kind of
Oh, yeah.
give his input and consult on different projects and
Yes,
all of that.
and that's the difference. The world of Tolkien is his when his son died, they've been a lot more loose about protecting that storyline. Whereas, like, George Lucas, like, he's like, "Let the community make stuff." Like, there was, like, a lot
Oh
more
yeah.
copyright rules pre-Disney, and
Mhm.
people were making fan films left and right, and that's the fun like, the community is what
Yeah, they
makes
support
Star
'em.
Wars.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
very, very different, like, where stories come in from fans, and then it gets turned into, like, an actual movie or show. So,
Mhm.
no, very different there.
Yeah. What say
Yeah.
you, Brian?
No, I think the way I kind of interpreted that kind of question in my mind is like very specific kind of shows, like shows made with a very specific vision or shows that kind of appeal to a mass audience. I think The Force Awakens is like the best example of like mass appeal media. And that's why that movie grew like wildfire. It was fun, kind of popcorny, you know, everyone kind of agrees it's kind of a cliched storyline and whatnot. I'm not here to bash on Force Awakens at all.
My
Love that
favorite Star Wars
movie. It's
movie.
fun. Yeah, it's a fun ride. One of the best movie experiences of my life. But I think I would easily take a show like Andor over a show like Ahsoka, even
Yeah.
if it's like unimportant characters and stuff that's very isolated storylines, which it's not. Andor absolutely does build into the larger show, or to the larger play of things, the larger Shakespearean arc that's happening. But it also has like a very specific vision for each 3-episode arc does, and they're all so unique and incredible and really well done. And I think George Lucas was also kind of a fan of more specific tones, right? Like I think the shift from episodes 1 to 2 is the best example. Like I love how Attack of the Clones turned into this like noir thriller kind of seedy underbelly of Coruscant thing,
Mhm.
and they're tracking down bounty hunters across the galaxy and sneaking around caves.
Yeah.
I think that's something that has always been a core of like even between episodes 4 and 5, there's a pretty dramatic tone shift, honestly. But they're both still unique, distinctly Star Wars because of the characters and the world and the themes between them. And I think Andor does them really well. And so what I'm saying is that you can do Star Wars perfectly well, but that doesn't mean that you've betrayed it by altering its chemistry a little bit.
And going off of that, I want to completely change one of my takes in the past. I don't think, I actually think it was really good that Anakin Skywalker in episode 2 was unbelievably cringy with Padme. Like, that sounds weird. Like, everyone's like, oh, that was cringy. He seems super scary. Padme should be running away. Here's my thing. Actually, going back to it, I think that scene was perfect. That fireside cringy
Mhm.
scene was so perfect for those two characters, and I finally can appreciate it now. All right. You have Anakin Skywalker who he's witnessed his mother passing. He's gone through these traumatic events, and his whole life he's been trying to live up to someone else's standards when he knows he's more. In his head, like he knows he's like superior in some way, shape, or form than all these people. But he tries to tone it down, and he really just wants the approval of those above him, but he never really gets it, and he always gets treated like a pissant.
Mhm.
Right. And so he goes through all these things, and he just wishes, oh, if this one thing would have been different, I could have saved her. But he caves into his like aggression and everything else. And you have Padme, who's got the biggest heart in the world, who in a normal situation should probably see this guy's like a creepy person, but she's known him for years. And so even if it's unlimited capacity, and she sees like this bird with a hurt wing who also
I
was
can
hot.
fix him.
Yeah. And it's like, I can make this better. He's hurting. And you got this guy at this incredibly vulnerable moment where, yeah, he probably should be scary because he will hurt you, as he does in episode 3. Like, this dude has the ability. Like, and so, he's at this crazy point, like a literal crazy point, and he acts insane around her, and she's bought in. And I'm like, what's wrong with you?
So
And now, yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, she's just like is bought into it. So I don't know. Like everything you're saying about Attack of the Clones, that scene is executed perfectly. And it gets way too much hate.
It does, absolutely. And I think really overall there's at worst like one or two kind of awkward moments or scenes in that movie. And I think I agree that they could be interpreted as foreshadowing, or
Yeah.
you're supposed to feel like, oh, this is how Darth Vader would hit on a girl. Of course, that's how Darth Vader would hit on a girl.
Yeah.
Well, and
He's never
someone,
talked to a girl in his life.
I remember seeing someone on TikTok call out that Hayden Christensen's delivery of his lines in the prequel trilogy does match up really well to Darth Vader's voice and the way that the cadence in which he speaks in the original trilogy. Because yeah, his like word choice and like delivery is a little awkward, but when you think about what Vader talks like and the way that he emphasizes certain points.
Yeah, like very William Shatner. I don't know. Overall, and it was funny because again, being a 90s baby, I didn't know the world hated him until I was like 14, and I'm like, we all love these, and they're like, we hate him, and I was like, oh, whoa, I didn't know that. Like the internet hates this guy. But I'll just say, like, everyone's like, oh, he was just so like vanilla and had no emotion and seemed like weird. I'm like, really? Like, I thought this dude was full of emotion in those two movies. I mean, think about that scene with Padme's ruminations. Just like he's not saying a thing. You just feel it. His mom dies. You feel it. He's cringy with Padme. You feel it.
Yeah.
And I honestly,
Sweet with her in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah. I mean, I will say there's no saving the I hate sand line for me. Still, maybe another 10 years that'll change, but I
That's
don't know.
on George.
Hayden Christensen, every time you bring him back, even now in Ahsoka, I'm just like, it brings me so much joy. Like, that is Darth Vader. That is Anakin Skywalker.
Mhm.
And ultimately, he is, if nothing else for people, he makes this show worth watching. And there's a lot more in this show that makes it worth watching. So, yeah, very enjoyable. With that, do we have anything else to say about this episode of Ahsoka?
Oh, I had to call out that at the end of this episode, and Thrawn calls back all of his night troopers and all that stuff. Shin is there by herself with Ahsoka, Ezra, and Sabine. And Ahsoka does the thing that I love in Star Wars, which is she extends her hand and she is like, I can help you. I
Oh, yeah.
love when Star Wars is extending a hand to the opposite side and asking them to come join us. But of course, Shin runs away.
Like a coward. I would love to know what's going on in her mind. And like that makes Shin, though, that action makes Shin a more interesting character. Like, of
Well,
course-
what does she think she's going to be like Thrawn's like second hand now? Like she,
Kind of enforcer, an assassin.
yeah, but she hasn't even like proven herself.
Yeah, she hasn't killed anyone.
She hasn't done anything yet, but I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
I just had to call out the
They
reach
killed a
out
lot
was
of people
is
in
one of my
that
favorite parts.
opening episode.
Yeah,
Oh,
they did.
that's true.
So
That is
she's-
She can go through some rebels.
Yeah, she can go through some rebs. That's about it. So, all right. With that, that's this episode.
Wait,
There's more?
I have forgotten to bring up bingo for
There
the
is
last couple
more.
episodes.
Mm.
So I owe you guys some bingo numbers. I think the last one we did was episode 4. No, episode 5 we did. There was live action Clone Wars flashbacks. I know we did that one.
A lot has happened. Why don't we just call it next week? You've
Should
got
we
the
call them all
numbers.
next week?
For
Just
the
call 'em.
finale.
Yeah, for the
Yeah.
finale. Let's just call them
Yeah,
all.
we'll do
Let's
that.
call them all. I'm sure
more
someone's got a
weeks.
bingo. We've got a few of those, I think, by now. So, all right. With that, that's this week's episode of Duel of the Ranks. If you liked listening to Brian, myself, and Amanda, and you want more stuff, well, guess what? There's a website called dueloftheranks.com. Go listen to it. We've got more content there. Otherwise, we will see you next week for the finale of Ahsoka. We're really excited to talk about it. I'm going to be virtual. You're going to be virtual. Brian's going to be virtual. We'll have a virtual party. We're going to do this thing. It's going to be a whole lot of fun to break that down. And once we're done with that, guess what? We're going back to the Clone Wars. So KG, strap up for more content. You got to watch the animated show because it's about to get hot in it. So, all right, that's this week. We'll see you next one.